Okay, so would you agree that we are a busy culture? Maybe? Very busy? I was trying to find, so I wrote this like, the spirit of rest in an age of busy, and I was like, that's not even close to saying it. Like, so I added crazy busy, but I could have added also ridiculously busy and other such adjectives. And maybe it seems to go in ebbs and flows, and some seasons of our lives are really busy, and maybe some are not so much. But in general, I think we're a species that does not slow down easily. And if you're an individual who happens to be less busy at the time, you may at times feel judgment for not being busy enough. There might be pressure to do more. Like that kind of seems to be the way we are. Busy is the norm, and busy is the value. And busyness is a badge of honor. Like we might as well just start to introduce ourselves with, hi, I'm busy, for all the times we are asked, hi, how are you? I'm busy, right? Just cut out that middle sentence and just say, hi, I'm busy. And we hate being busy, right? But we feel guilty when we have an empty time. I'm finding in my own space, in my own life, my busyness masks so many other things. Like sometimes it's real, when I'm really this busy, it's hard to see what's actually going on in my life, whether it makes it hard to see the state of my house when I'm that busy, or the state of my relationships when I'm super busy. Maybe the state of our city, or the state of our communities, the state of our infrastructure, whether it's like the social infrastructure around you or our physical infrastructure. Sometimes when we're so busy, we don't see these things. Busy sometimes masks our disappointment. Busy sometimes masks our fear. Busy hides our dreams. I have a dream, but I can't do it. I am way too busy, right? And sometimes busy masks why we don't follow our longings, why we don't stop to help, and all of those things. There was an experiment done by Princeton Seminary in the 70s on busy. So this was even, 40 years ago? 50 years ago. On busy and hurry and its impact on our decision making. So they brought in a group of students from the seminary, so these are guys, maybe some girls, training to be ministers, and their task was to give a sermon on the Good Samaritan. So you know the Good Samaritan story where the guy who's excluded and looked down as an outsider, he becomes the good guy because he stops to help someone, right? That's the story where Jesus is like, everything I'm doing comes down to this. This is the sum of the law and the prophets, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, that story. And they were told to go to a studio across their campus where teachers were waiting to mark them, hear their sermon and mark them. And the sneaky researchers did this. They did 1/3 was told that they were already late. Actually, they were already ready. You have to go now. 1/3 of the students were told, oh, you know what, if you leave right now, you'll get there right on time. And the other third said, oh, if you leave now, you'll probably have a few minutes just to wait and get ready before you have to start. And then they had an actor planted on the road towards where the studio was that they were going to be doing this task at, who was in need and in physical need of help, right? Someone asking for need. And the results were that the people who thought they were late, only 10% of them stopped. The people who thought they would be just on time if they started, 45% of those people stopped. And the people who thought they had a few minutes, 63% of those stopped. I don't know what those other 37% thought either, but whatever. Anyways, the point, though, I think, of that experiment, I don't think it was to make people feel bad. And my telling you that, the point is not to make us feel bad, like, oh, we should always stop. But I think it really helps me understand the degree that busyness and hurry and obligation, they have a way stronger pull on our behavior than even our deepest convictions and our deepest longings. Right? So that question opened up to me was to wonder about how busy and hurry, having lots depending on us, how hard it makes it for us to do the things we want to do, to live in a way that's best for us, to treat others the way we actually do really want to treat them, right? I think that lifestyle is so full of things to get and things to do and things relying on us. It makes it kind of hard to take Jesus at his word sometimes. Not just about how we treat others, yes, but also what he longs for us to be able to enter into his rest. It makes it hard for us to believe him when he says things. So having a full plate, though, is not bad. I want to make that clear. Having projects that you give an enthusiastic yes 2, that is not a bad thing. Contributing to the good of a community is good. Taking care of your family is good. Doing what is necessary and needed and being faithful to what you've been given. Oh, that is all very good. But maybe you've noticed, I've noticed in my life, maybe you've noticed there's a line that's crossed from an enthusiastic yes to a yes that's out of duty, and a yes out of guilt, and a yes out of fear of missing out, a yes out of a fear of missing opportunities. We're designed to do good work, but running around the city for our kids, for our work, for our fun, for our volunteering, to the point of a body burnout, right? That's not a gift. And right there in our being busy, where we show it as a badge and we then bear it like a curse, I think there might be a cry, an ache in us, from us, an overwhelmed people, who actually, could we do this any differently? What could we possibly do differently here? So I was thinking, the question for me today, when I preach, I'm actually just speaking to myself. The question for me today, the question for all of us, I think is, in discerning the spirit of that we've been going on, the spirit of rest, is how can we receive the spirit of rest while engaging in our communities, while creating good experiences for our kids, while doing all the things that we need to do for our bosses, for our work, while taking care of ourselves? How do we do that in our culture's spirit of more, faster, and perfect kind of busy? How do we maintain our bodies, our souls, our hearts? Maybe the question is, how do we let Jesus' spirit of rest maintain our souls and bodies and hearts? Maybe the question is, what would it be like actually in my real life to take Jesus at his word? I'm going to get to that word in a second. Our busyness, our extreme busyness, our doing things till we're not functional humans anymore, that's not a new thing though. That's what I want to say. And this is helpful to remember because our culture, it does not help matters. Technology is exacerbating the issue astoundingly, and I'll get to that in a second too, but this drive to succeed, this to maintain productivity, to perform and perfect to the point of our own detriment, like for some reason that is hardwired into the human condition, I think more than we sometimes acknowledge. And maybe this is that original sin of not trusting a good father, not trusting we are loved, and that we are called to do a good work, and that there is enough for everyone. Maybe that's playing into our human drive and tendency to burn out. So I wanted to just share this little bit of history with you by way of showing us that this is not a new phenomenon. So in 516 AD, a really interesting document was written. It was called The Rule of Benedict, and it was written by, if you're Catholic, Saint Benedict, and we call him a desert father. So going back and placing him in his history, by the 500s, the Roman Empire, which had conquered and colonized so much of that world in Jesus' time, it had continued to expand and contract in those centuries after Christ. And the Emperor Constantine then decided to legalize the Christian faith in the 300s, and he used it, and he got the power from it, make it part and parcel of his empire, kind of setting into motion like a shift from the faith founded by, honestly, a colonized Arabic Jew, right, who preached forgiveness and love of neighbor and absolute trust in a good father, into this religion of powerful and political and money, and it kind of shifted, didn't it? And it became part and parcel of the empire. And in those centuries, as Christianity became the faith of the government, the church was growing and changing, the empire was growing and changing, and within that, though some of these people in that empire were longing for something true of God, and they had to leave. They couldn't even do that in their churches, in the cities. They left. They went to the desert. They found a cave. Some of them went on their own to sit and to be with God. Like, I cannot get it in the city. That is not where I'm finding God. Maybe if I leave and I go to this desert and I go to this cave all by myself, I'll find something. And that became a trend, and then more and more people would go, and you'd find like there's little pockets of people growing up here and there. And then as that happened, you can kind of sense trends in cultures, right? People start to then have to organize themselves. All of a sudden, there's like 20 of us in this cave. Oh, all of a sudden, there's like 100 of us in this cave. They start to organize themselves. And what you come up by the 500s, you have pockets of what we now know as monastic communities. That's kind of how that all shaped up. looking to what does it mean to live together in community to find God. So within all that, we have this guy named Benedict. And he was the leader of one of these communities, and as it grew, he really felt the need to write some guidelines down about how to live together in a healthy community. And he produced something that we now call the Rule of St. Benedict. And this was a set of rules for the monks on how to live well and how to form community and pursue Christ. But what makes the Rule of Benedict different from lots of other rules that were popping up in these communities at the time was that in that effort to get away from the extremism of wealth and power, some desert groups went fully into the opposite extreme of like harsh asceticism. So asceticism is like self-flagellation and like starving yourself for God, that kind of thing. Like that was popular. I mean, it's one of those extremism breeds extremism things. And out of that, Benedict was like, I don't know if that's quite the way either. And he recognized that working bodies to the bone and holding such a harsh standard of physical and emotional life, even for a presumably good cause, that can't be what God intended either. So within the rule are clear guidelines for rest. He acknowledged that bodies and minds and hearts, they can be overdriven, that's his word, and that no one is to be commanded to work past their capacity at all. So in chapter 64, we've given it chapters of the rule, he writes, and everyone must show forethought and consideration in his orders. Whether the task he assigns concerns God or the world, he should be discerning and moderate. So this is for leaders of communities. Discerning and moderate, bearing in mind the discretion of holy Jacob, who said, if I drive my flocks too hard, they will all die in a single day. Even in these times of no technology, right? They did not have the internet. Humans could work themselves too hard and work each other too hard. And Benedict, in his 6th century culture that was so different and yet kind of familiar to us, said, wow, God does not require us to work so hard that we collapse. And so let's build our community based on that, right? So that's what St. Benedict has to offer us today. Humans strive. We always strive well past our capacity. Humans will make themselves sick, trying so hard, and humans will demand that others make themselves sick for even the best of reasons, for their kids, for their community, for their work, for their vocation, for the poor, for the church. Now we add to that human nature of working past our limits our culture's complete lack of physical boundaries, natural boundaries. We don't have darkness anymore that requires us to stop because we can't see, right? We don't have silence. That does not exist anymore. We're not bound by the lack of light in our work. If it gets dark, we just turn on the light and keep going, right? We're not hemmed in by a lack of stimuli to our brain, by a silence that restores. We're connected at all points in this time. I'm literally writing these words. I wrote this in my notes, and I was having 3 different text conversations at the same time as I'm writing because I can, and they're all good conversations. They were with Brad and I think Aletha and my dad, all kind of happening at the same time, but I was like, oh yeah, there's no natural boundary to limiting my scope. Right? My brain is constantly moving and going and creating and extending. It's constantly connecting now to stories and connecting to news, connecting to each other. It connects to suffering in a way that we don't know, we haven't totally experienced before, and it connects to longing in a way, kind of never stops. So writer Joan Chittister, she's a Benedictine nun, makes sense, and she describes our predicament kind of like this. We drive ourselves relentlessly from one exhaustion to another. We pace our societies by the pace of our computers. We conduct the major relationships of our lives, both professional and personal, according to the speed of our communications. We measure ourselves by the amount of productivity. And every day we become more exhausted, less rested in body, spirit, and mind, and so less capable of producing things, let alone of developing relationships as a result. And that's not irony, that's tragedy. And though we know it, we do not know what to do about it. So what's the ache in the world that we are feeling? Why are we so driven? Why can't we figure out what the pace of human is, right? Why are we burning out? So much burnout, so much anxiety. Why do we let each other live like that, right? How do we even have enough time to uncover this all, to acknowledge it, to even start to begin to heal it? And I think this is where Jesus speaks. In Matthew 11 and 12, we actually have a really interesting set of interactions. In Matthew 11, Jesus is talking about how people are not getting what he's doing. They're not seeing it. They're not recognizing it. Oh, woe to you. And he lists all these places who just aren't getting it. You're not seeing it. And I don't think it's a bad you guys for not getting it. I think he's just like so upset. You're not getting it. Oh, this is going to hurt you if you don't get this. And then he opens his hand to explicitly say what he is offering that they are not seeing. At this time, Jesus declared, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you've hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children. And he goes on, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. I'm going to read it again in the Message, because those familiar words become even more evocative here. Here Jesus is saying, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And then immediately after that, the storyteller in Matthew 12 shows Jesus then talking to a bunch of people about Sabbath, about the day of rest, right? Sabbath was a key feature in that form of Judaism that Jesus grew up in. Keep the Sabbath holy was a paramount command. Keep one day not to work, but to rest, to refrain from working and making others work. Remember all the good things on this day. This day is a gift. And what was going on in Jesus' time is that the striving nature of humanity was making even that gift of rest into a burden. And Jesus is like, oh my gosh, no. The Sabbath was not made for God. It's not something you have to strive for. It was made for you. It was made for humans. It's something you enter with trust. It's not another rule. And to that I was just like, oh, humans. We even turn our gift of rest into a burden. They did it then, the disciples did it, the early church did it, the desert fathers did it, the reformers did it. John Calvin was not known for his ability to rest. He worked day and night and died at 54. I'm not sure, was that what he wanted? Was that what we wanted, right? We do it. Our striving hits even there in trying to live into the goodness of God's order. We make even resting a burden. And in our trying so hard, I think the work of flourishing, our flourishing in the world, it suffers. And then the flourishing of the world, for the world, that suffers. So what are we missing? What are we not understanding about these unforced rhythms of grace? So we're just going to dwell on those passages just for a little bit, and I'll ask some questions. Are you tired, worn out, burned out in religion? Come to me, get away with me. You'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. So first, I think we're asked to pay attention to the signs. Are you tired? Sign number one. Are you worn out, burned out? How do you know if you're tired and worn out? Our bodies tell us, first thing, right? We don't sleep. When we are really tired, we don't sleep well. When we are really worried, we work harder. Some of us maybe get really blatant signals from our bodies, right? Our bodies are gifts, and they know things, and they do not ever lie about stress, right? They are honest. My back goes out when I'm stressed. The first time was in my first year of my master's degree. I finished a semester, and it was immediately something went out, and I couldn't move for a whole week. And I had met Brad a month before, and I was like, can you come over and help me cook? I can't move, right? And another thing I've noticed that my arms go numb when I'm really stressed. And I first noticed that when my mom was really sick, and that whole period of time walking with her in her illness until her death. My arms went numb. It was weird. Something in my whole body could not hold the magnitude of what was going on. And my extremities just went numb, right? And it still does that when I'm holding too much, when I'm holding onto things I'm not supposed to be able to handle, my arms go numb. So how does your body tell you when it's tired and when it's worn out? Do you trust your body? What would happen if you stopped? Our brains and our minds, they tell us too, in that they kind of stop working. A fog sets in when we've been working so hard and applying our mind to something so intently. It's like a fog sets in and there's just too much and we can't process it all and it just stops working. Have you ever been on a project where you just can't go any further on it and you can't make any more sense? You just have to get up and leave it, right? Maybe that's once in a while, or maybe that's happening more and more. What is your brain fog telling you? And do you trust it? And what would happen if you stopped? How do we know when we're burned out on religion, on the tasks and asks and demands that living faithfully is saying we have to do to come to God? We have to do to be faithful. I think there is, what is your heart telling you? What is your heart telling you? Do you feel resentment? Do you feel, it's not fair? Why am I doing all of this? What creeps up then in those moments? What's behind that? Is it exhaustion? Is it fear? Is it your worth and your value? What will happen if you stop, right? How about when you experience despair about anything ever changing? When you're trying so hard to maintain a feeling or create something in your community, create something in your home, and it's not working. What is your heart telling you, and do you trust it? What are the emotions there? What would happen if you stopped and listened to them? Jesus asks, are you worn out? Are you tired? Are you burned out? Then come to me. Get away with me. I will give you rest. Come to me. Get away with me. I will give you rest. Here's how I respond to that. First of all, I don't even engage. Yeah, but is my automatic response. Okay, well, that's nice, but I can't just stop and come away with you and get rest. That's my first response. My second response is then to double down and be like, okay, now I have to try really hard to get away with Jesus better. I better set up my schedule, mark it off, really force it, make it happen. Those are my two responses to stress and to these words. And I'm wondering, could it be that we are not expected to do anything harder or to try more to receive this rest? I love this come to me phrase. It's one of our best phrases. I think it's actually might be the most important one here. Because we come to Jesus, we come to wherever he is. We deeply know, we believe this here at the Road, and we believe this, that Christ is everywhere. Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his. That's an old poem. And we know that there are 10,000 places through which we can get away with Christ. He is the firstborn of creation. So our bodies and our minds and our hearts instinctually know that getting away to creation is one of the most effective and thorough ways to get away with Jesus, to come to him. But he also plays in the bodies and minds and hearts of each other. Christ plays within our relationships, our loved ones. Be with them. That is coming to Christ. He plays in our laughter and our art and our music. These are all gifts that we come to him through. Never forget that he is through all and in all. Come to me in any place you find me and let me give you rest. Let me give you rest. Let me give you rest. I'll show you. I'll do it. The word here is then just do nothing. Receive. This is the hardest thing we're going to do. We have built a world that will fall apart without us, right? Where trusting is literally the hardest thing we do. We make burdens out of gifts. It's so hard to trust that there's enough for everyone. There's so hard to trust that there is enough food and money and resources for everyone, even ourselves. What would it be like to trust that they will be provided for? Your kids, your church, your family, whoever they is that is in your mind. What would it be like to trust that God is the enough in the world and it won't all fall apart if you're not frantically holding all the things, frantically producing the enough that everyone needs. And this is so subversive. Give me subversive anytime. In our culture of bootstraps, and I call it meritocracy on steroids, that is the culture we live in. Honestly, where our growth is measured in how much we can buy, this is so subversive in our culture, our Christian culture where success, even in our Christian world, success is money and tangible blessings and not things like following a good Jesus into the wilderness, learning how to be actually human right through death and then resurrection over and over. This is so subversive because Jesus is saying that our truest state is one of rest and one of being and one of receiving, and we do nothing other than turn to it. That's it. That's the gift of Sabbath. Sabbath is not for God. Sabbath is for us. Our only action is just open the door, take a step in, put down the pack. I think about my dad. He just did the Camino. He walked 262 kilometers in Europe with a backpack on. What would it be like to get to where you're going that night? Step in, and just take off the pack, right? That is the only thing we are required to do. Take off the pack. Learn from me, the passage says. Watch Jesus. Like an apprentice watches at his master's elbow, just observing, watching, practicing what he's seeing. Learning by being in the presence of someone who trusts absolutely. That's what it means to learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Watch how human Jesus was. Watch how bent down in the dirt he was, how kind to his own needs he was, how much he affirmed his own body. He affirmed his need for sleep. He affirmed his need for food. And then how kind he was to the bodies of others, right? Concerned for their food and their rest and their troubled hearts. Watch how much he trusted that silence was a way through. Watch how much he trusted that sometimes choosing inaction was okay. And it's an integral part of faithful life. Are we really allowed to rest? Are we allowed to need that grace? Are we allowed to? That's the question that always bubbles up in me. There are rhythms to life with God. We are meant to work and do good work, right? And we are meant to rest and really rest. The grind is destructive to both the person and the work. We are meant for rest, says Joan Chittister, for the sake of the person and the work. Whatever we're trying to do, it's not going to survive if we're not resting. Wendell Berry writes, order is the only possibility of rest. The made order must seek the given order and find its place in that. And what he's saying is that us who are made, created, we must seek the example given, the given order. The Father who rests, hello, seventh day, right? The Savior who relishes in his rest and his quiet, and it's so hard to do. So I asked on my Facebook page, what's the reason you don't say no to things? And I kind of left the question pretty vague, because sometimes how people answer or how people read the question is just as insightful. But the number one answer to what is the reason you don't say no to things was guilt. The number two was being thought of as lazy, if I was not doing as much as I could possibly. And the third one was fearing we will miss out on what we could get and what our children could get. That was a big one, if we don't work and kind of constantly do things for them, right? So I was just like, wow, did I hear that correctly? Guilt, shame, and fear. Those are the answers. Those are why we don't say no to things. And I'm like, I think the message of subversive Jesus is nope. Come away with me. Let me teach you the unforced rhythms of grace. So, how do we do this? Just all go home and just stop. Just quit your jobs, go home, stop making meals for your dinner. No, we can't do that. How do we do this? Right? And I think this is why sometimes it's one of those things we're just going to wrestle with probably our whole lives. It's going to be a constant wrestling with God and our own selves. It's not one of those 3 points and here's a task and you can click it off and you're good to go, right? That's not this. But rest is not something you'll ever be exhorted or shamed or guilted into, right? But if you do need someone in a pastor role to give you permission, I'm here to do that for you. And first, I'm going to say that how we do this is first by remembering that this is a trust thing, right? It's a hands off the controls thing. It does not all depend on you thing. So I'm giving us all permission to do these things. Rest in the way your body needs, right? Does it need sleep? That's not bad. Sleep. We were made to sleep. Why do we feel guilty for sleeping, right? Does it need food? Does it need comfort food? Does it need healthy food? What does it need? Does it need water? Do you just need to drink some more water? Does it need meals with friends? Does it need walks? Does it need just sitting and reading? What does your body need? And that's going to be between you and your body, and it's going to be different than the next person, isn't it? Rest in the way your mind needs. Unplug from the stimuli. This is my hardest thing. I was a late adopter to the smartphone. I didn't even get it till Manny was like 2. And holy smokes, it is attached to me now, right? Turn off the lights, turn off the noise, turn off the news. Anne Lamott, she famously said, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you, right? Unplug from putting your mind to all the tasks. You don't have to figure it all out, right? Rest in a way your heart needs. Unforced grace. Does it need space from other people? It might be a season for a little bit of distance, right? Or does it need to be with people, be around others? Does your heart need something like poetry or art or music? Does it need laughing? Does it need to go watch a Netflix special? Right? Does it need silliness and childlike wonder? Does it need to go out and play in the leaves? Oh my gosh, I just had an image of a whole bunch of adults raking their leaves and playing in them. Does it need affirmation? Does your heart need affirmation that it is a human heart and it is a good thing, right? Christ plays in 10,000 places, and he says, come to me. And all of this is Sabbath. The fullness of the whole universe working, right? The world is turning, that sun is coming up and going down, and we are not doing a thing about it. That's Sabbath. Coming to Christ, watching Christ, that's not another task to do. It is the subversive faith that in all of our seasons we can choose our yeses, and in all of our seasons we can know rest. Yes, our kids are still there. Yes, we are still sick. Yes, we have to go to work. Yes, we have to deal with unpleasant things. Yes, we have to sometimes deal with trauma and tragedy and diagnoses and deep pain, right? Yes, we are overwhelmed. Unforced rhythms of grace do not mean a spa trip to the mountains necessarily, right? Could, but they doesn't necessarily mean that. Learning unforced rhythms of grace does not mean leaving your life. But could we practice Sabbath, which is to say, could we practice trust? Practice that there is enough for everyone by something as simple as filling our hearts with a beautiful scene, dwelling there for a bit. Could we take breaks from the news? Could we say a good no? Could we practice looking with our eyes at all the good things instead of all the bad things, the restorative things? Could we trust enough to actually be restored? And then could we make that a reality for others, offer others Sabbath, make it so that they can take Sabbath too? Jesus' grace. I think sometimes we forget that is actually really incredibly beautiful. He won't put anything ill-fitting or heavy on us. And when I read that, I laughed out loud because I was like, has Jesus actually met Christians? Because that is not our brand. We are not known for not making things heavy and ill-fitting and putting them on people, right? And again, that's not even just ironic, that is tragic. It actually is. And yet, there he still is, 2,000 years later, boldly saying to our hearts, I know what a true human needs. I know what the pace of human is. I know what it means to be really and actually alive. And amazingly, it requires nothing from you. No thing from you. Just a turning to and putting our work and that heavy pack down and just receiving. And that is the foundation of every good work we're going to do in this world. All right. Can you tell I'm preaching at myself today? I am going to read it one more time, that passage. And I was just thinking about this on my drive here, and I think maybe each one of us has this, but maybe pay attention to whose voice it is in your head that's telling you need to work harder or do more or that you can't take a break. I know whose voice that is in my head. A certain boss, maybe a parent, maybe someone you know, right? Whose voice it is, pay attention to that. And then hear this voice. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. God, all we can ask is that that would be so in each of our hearts.